Hey, what's up, guys? Good evening. Hey, tonight we're going to be reading from the declaration of Donald C. Canestraro, who is an investigator for the Office of Military Commissions. And what we're going to do is 22 pages long. So I'm not going to read all 22 pages. I'm going to make this into a three-part series and read about 6, 7 pages each session. And what's going to be inside this declaration is a number of ex-FBI officials, as well as commission officials who are speaking on conditions of anonymity to Canestraro. And you'll notice that their names go by CS and then a number. So CS1 will be the first one, CS2. I think there's about 18 of these people that spoke on conditions of anonymity. So why don't we just go right to it, and then I'll hide my face here so you can read the whole page along with me. As you can see, Declaration of Donald C. Canestraro. Your declarant, Donald C. Canestraro, declares the following. I'm an investigator assigned to the Office of Military Commissions, Military Commissions Defense Organization, and have been working in that capacity since April of 2016. Prior to my assignment to the Military Commissions Defense Organization, I was a special agent for the Drug Enforcement Administration for more than 21 years. While serving as a TEA special agent, I interviewed numerous suspects and witnesses. Information developed during these interviews, further investigations under my purview. These investigations led to seizures and arrests. Testimony I have provided has been accepted by both federal and state courts as accurate and trustworthy, and has contributed to numerous convictions. I have not included each and every fact known to me in this declaration. During July of 2016, I began an investigation into the possible involvement of the Saudi Arabian government and the Central Intelligence Agency in the events leading up to the 9/11 attacks. In support of this inquiry, I began a review of discovery provided by the government to the defense and open source materials available on Omar al-Bayoumi, a suspected Saudi intelligence officer who had contact with 9/11 hijackers Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar. During the review I conducted, I noted that an FBI file on al-Bayoumi, released to Judicial Watch by the FBI pursuant to a FOIA request, used a 199 numerical designator followed by the letters SD. Based on prior training and experience, I noted that the FBI file designator is a part of a numerical code that tells the reader what type of violation the FBI is investigating in a given case. I observed that the 199 numerical designator most likely indicates a counterintelligence file, and that the capital letters SD indicates that the investigation was conducted by the San Diego field office. Now, let me add more to it, by the way. Let me add more. It would be right. SD does mean San Diego because that's where Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were stationed at. They arrived in Los Angeles, and then 2 weeks later, they arrived in San Diego under invitation by Anwar al-Awlaki and Omar al-Bayoumi. Al-Bayoumi is a suspected spy. For more information on the latest information regarding Omar al-Bayoumi, Anwar al-Awlaki, and Osama Basnan and Fahad al-Tamari, all these people who had contacts with Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, please go to my YouTube channel. Go to the search bar and type in Operation Encore, and you'll see the numerous videos I've done in the last 6 months regarding the Operation Encore, which I'm not done yet. I'm not even done reading them yet. There's thousands more pages. Who knows what information is on there. But the information, this declarant, by the way, is not in the media spotlight. I wonder why. Well, I can understand why. We're talking about the CIA and the Saudi government here. And they don't want to destroy their interests in the public eye. So the media isn't covering this, and hardly anyone's reading this declaration. And I think it's a shame, because Dan Christensen and Donald Canestraro deserve a ton of credit for still keeping up and informing the public about the malfeasance and criminality of the agency and the Saudi Arabian government leading up to the 9/11 attacks. Okay, let's continue. I then analyzed FBI documents referencing Omar al-Bayoumi released by the government to the defense pursuant to a prior discovery production. The documents show that a witness interviewed by the FBI following the 9/11 attacks told agents that he suspected al-Bayoumi was a Saudi intelligence officer. I wonder who that was. Further information from the discovery shows that the FBI agents conducted numerous interviews regarding al-Bayoumi after 9/11 attacks. Actually, there are a number of confidential sources in the Operation Encore files. And like I said, if you watch those videos, I did provide those files in the description. The interviews show that al-Bayoumi was seen with 9/11 hijackers Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar on numerous occasions and had organized a social gathering for the hijackers while the two men were living in San Diego. It was a house party that they had, which was videotaped by Omar al-Bayoumi. Further investigation by the FBI shows that al-Bayoumi assisted the two hijackers with getting an apartment. The released FBI information shows that al-Bayoumi was interviewed by FBI agents in 2003 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. During the interview, al-Bayoumi stated that he met al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar at a Middle Eastern restaurant in Los Angeles, California. It was called the Mediterranean Cafe. It's not there anymore. And there were two stories. One was by al-Bayoumi's assistant, Kaysan Bindan, in which he was interviewed by the FBI, and basically said that they were in the restaurant first, and then al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar were in the restaurant first, and then Kaysan Bindan and al-Bayoumi came in the restaurant. Later on, he did another interview and basically changed that story to the reverse. Al-Bayoumi stated that he was in the restaurant first, seated. Kaysan Bindan actually said they were walking in. So who to believe, right? I think the story is that al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi were in the restaurant first. Now, this is coming from another confidential source in the Operation Encore files, where he said that al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar were told about the restaurant from congregants of the King Fahd Mosque, in which Fahad al-Thumairy is an imam at and is the regional director. And he was put there in place by Muassad al-Jarrah. Al-Bayoumi stated that he overheard al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar speaking Arabic in the restaurant, and that he spoke with the two men and then offered to assist them in finding an apartment in San Diego. A review of discovery provided by the FBI, however, shows that one witness, whose name is redacted from documents provided by the government to the defense, told agents in 2002 that he or she observed al-Bayoumi dropping a piece of paper near al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar's table and then striking up a conversation with them. According to the FBI's witness, al-Bayoumi actions appeared unnatural. This would fit with Kaysan Bindan's story and also the story by al-Bayoumi, because, here's a guy who basically doesn't know these two men, and then hears them speaking Arabic, and then provides lodging for them for free, helps them open up a bank account in their name, helps them get a driver's license in their name. I mean, it's just like, here and according to al-Bayoumi, he basically says, "Oh, I like to help all the a lot of these foreign nationals, Saudi Arabia nationals that are first coming to the country." And then when that confidential source that I talked about before, Operation Encore files, when the FBI asked him and said, "Has he ever helped anyone like that before?" He said, "No." How about that one? I spoke about that in videos before. Please watch it. I then conducted further research regarding Omar al-Bayoumi. Information obtained from open sources showed that the FBI suspected al-Bayoumi was associated with Fahad al-Thumairy, a Saudi government official who was assigned to the Saudi consulate in Los Angeles prior to 9/11. Open source documents also showed that an FBI examination of telephone records showed numerous phone calls between numbers associated with al-Thumairy and al-Bayoumi prior to the 9/11 attacks. Now, more about this. Again, going back to the Operation Encore files, there is another confidential source, a different one, that said that there was a phone call from Malaysia telling Fahad al-Thumairy that there will be an arrival of two brothers. And this was before the Malaysia Summit Al-Qaeda meeting in January 5th. So this is a phone call made in December of 1999 to Fahad al-Damari at the King Fahd Mosque, in which a confidential source that reported to the FBI, stating that he heard about the arrival of two brothers. So that would show that Khalid and the two brothers are Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, not actual brothers, but there you have it. And this would show that there was going to be knowledge about two people. Whether Fahad al-Damari knew they were al-Qaeda or not, that's not definitive. But what is definitive is that this source basically said that they were going to arrive and that this information was provided in December 1999. Let's continue. During June of 2016, I interviewed a former 9/11 Commission investigator whose identity is known to me. The investigator is identified herein as CS1. CS1 stated that sometime around 2003, he or she interviewed Fahad al-Damari. Now, the commissioner investigator who interviewed Fahad al-Damari, which is public, was either Raj Day or Dieter Snell. Now, if you go to the Scribd.com site, I think this 9/11 Commission memo for record is free. Just type in Fahad al-Damari PDF, and I think it'll come up either from Cryptomine or Scribd, one of those. And you'll see that there are two commission investigators that are there in the presence of Fahad al-Damari. And it's either Raj Day or Dieter Snell. It's either one. CS1 stated that the purpose of the interview was to question al-Damari regarding his relationship with the San Diego hijacker and his possible association with Omar al-Bayoumi. Excuse me. CS1 recalled that numerous other people were in the room while he or she and other investigators were questioning al-Damari. CS1 stated that members of the Saudi counterintelligence agency were also present during his or her interview of al-Damari. CS1 told me that he or she felt that al-Damari was less than 100% forthcoming. That would be right, because in that memorandum for the record of Fahad al-Damari, it basically states at the end that the investigators found al-Damari's report and in an interview that he was deceptive throughout the interview. And when he was shown pictures of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, he said he never heard of them. And then all of a sudden, one of the Saudi Arabian GID officers whispered in his ear, and Damari says, "Oh, I did see them before on the television after the 9/11 attacks." He lied. The second interview was held in the Saudi government building. Members of the Saudi security service were also present at the second interview. CS1 recalled that al-Damari spoke English fluently. CS1 also noted that during both sessions, when al-Damari was asked a controversial question, he asked that the question be translated from English into Arabic. CS1 noted that the above might have an indicator that al-Damari was being deceptive during his questioning by members of the commission. CS1 confirmed that al-Damari worked for the Saudi government in the Department of Religious Affairs. I next interviewed a second former 9/11 Commission investigator whose identity is known to me. The investigator is herein referred to as CS2. CS2 stated that he or she was responsible for the 9/11 Commission's investigation into the possible link between the Saudi government and the 9/11 attacks. CS2 noted that the staff director of the 9/11 Commission, Philip Zelikow, limited the number of witnesses that commission investigators could interview. Is that surprising? I mean, if Zelikow is there on behalf of the Bush administration, they're going to protect their interest. Their interest is Saudi Arabia and Israel. In this case, of course, they're going to limit the number of witnesses from the Saudi government to the commission. Why? Because they don't want them implicated in the 9/11 attacks. It would hurt their image and destroy them and basically ruin the already long-standing 80-year relationship. And of course, the United States is the regulator of the oil market. This would really harm it because the United States public would basically say, why are we having any relations with a country that was involved with the 9/11 attacks? You know, that would be the outcry. So Zelikow right here is being quite malicious. And, they weren't interested in the truth. They wanted their version of the truth. CS2 recalled that the FBI had Omar al-Bayoumi under investigation prior to 9/11 attacks. CS2 told me that it was his or her belief that Omar al-Bayoumi was receiving substantial sums of money from the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. prior to 9/11 attacks. CS2 recalled that this money was being funneled from accounts at Riggs Bank. Is that ringing any bells? Google Riggs Bank. Belonging to Haifa bin Faisal, the wife of the Saudi ambassador to the United States, Bandar bin Sultan. Now, let's talk about that for a little bit, right? Wow, that is huge, because what this means is that that the payments from Haifa bin Faisal were going to an intermediary, and that intermediary was Omar al-Bayoumi's wife. And it was going to another person named Mawida Douijak, who's the wife of Osama Basnan. And then that money was going to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hadmi. However, Omar al-Bayoumi said that they were using that money for hair transplants or some other medical condition. I think it was either for Omar al-Bayoumi's wife or Osama Basnan's wife. Either or. Let's continue. Open source documents also show that the FBI examination of telephone records. Oh, all right, I read that. I forgot where we were. It was on this page. I'm sorry. CS2 related that his or her investigation showed that al-Bayoumi had several no-show jobs while he was living in the United States. CS2 defined a no-show job as one where an employee is paid by a given employer but not required to actually show up for work. CS2 stated that al-Bayoumi allegedly was employed by NCAN, a Saudi company. According to CS2, commissioned investigators later learned that al-Bayoumi was paid by the company but rarely showed up for work. Based on the above, I checked open source information regarding NCAN. The information shows that NCAN was a subcontractor for a Saudi aviation company, Dalla Avco. Now, more about this, because this came from the Operation Encore files. Dalla Avco, when questioned by the FBI, basically said that they barely know who Omar al-Bayoumi was. They knew that he worked for the company when going through his records, but said that they really barely ever saw him. That's a ghost employee. And who got him that job? Well, to know more about that, go to the Operation Encore files and the videos on my channel. I speak about it more in depth. Checks of open source information show that 2 months following al-Bayoumi's meeting with the 2 San Diego Leap base hijackers, his monthly allowance from NCAN rose from $465 to $3,700. That should be ringing bells right there. CS2 stated that he or she believed that Fahad al-Tameri was an intelligence officer working for the Saudi government. Checks of open source intelligence show that al-Tameri was later deported from the U.S. on suspicion of links to terrorism. CS2 stated that sometime following the 9/11 attacks, the FBI set up a squad at the Washington field office to investigate his ties between the Saudi government and 9/11 attacks. This ain't nothing new, because in the Operation Encore files, Fahad al-Tameri was put in that position at the imam of the King Fahd Mosque in Los Angeles by Muassad al-Jarrah, who was in the Office of Ministry Affairs in Washington, D.C. And the FBI investigated him and found out that he was commiserating with known terrorists inside the country. So he was in charge of putting imams with very extremist ties to Wahhabism, with ties to extremist terrorist ideology and groups. So, and there was another imam whose name I forgot, that was investigated by the FBI in the Operation Encore files as well. And Muassad al-Jarrah got him that job. By the way, Muassad al-Jarrah was the name redacted in the Encore files, But then, according to an FBI slip-up, his name was publicly unredacted in one page, and everybody knew who he was after that. CS2 stated that sometime in 2003, he or she was fired by the staff director of the 9/11, Philip Zelikow. According to the investigator, he or she was fired in that he or she obtained a classified index to the House and Senate's joint inquiry into 9/11 from a source other than official channels. According to CS2, the index is a document that identifies the source documents, i.e., FBI and other government agency reports that detail the suspected Saudi involvement in the 9/11 attacks. Well, how about that? A 9/11 investigator doing their job found that there was evidence of Saudi complicity or Saudi links to the 9/11 hijackers. Boom, he's fired. Fired by none other than Zelikow. How about, and this is damning. This is huge, really damning stuff, because it shows that the 9/11 Commission itself, right off the bat, didn't want Saudi Arabia to be implicated in the attacks. The question is why? Well, God's sakes, just take a look at the Bush dynasty's family line, and you'll see that there's a direct, strong link with Saudi Arabia, more so Saudi Arabia than Israel, because the Bush family was no friend to Israel. That doesn't mean that they were enemies and that they didn't acquiesce to them every once in a while, but they rather just basically keep them at arm's length. Not so with the Saudi Arabian government, because there's billions at stake, trillions at stake. Let's continue. CST noted that sometime before his or her termination, Zelikow had blocked his or her requests to conduct interviews and obtain documents pertaining to his or her inquiry. CS2 noted that Zelikow seized the index from his or her at the time of his or her termination and did not let anyone else in the commission see the document, which means that Zelikow interfered with the investigation. Damning stuff. How is this not all over the fucking media? Unbelievable here. Unreal. Let's continue. CS2 stated that the former deputy staff director of the 9/11 Commission may know where the index is currently located. Well, hell, let's go look at it and declassify it through a FOIA request. During August of 2016, I interviewed a former FBI agent whose identity is known to me. The former agent is herein referred to as CS3. CS3 recalled that from January of 1999 until May of 2003, she was assigned as an FBI special agent to the CIA station that handled all matters concerning Osama bin Laden, herein referred to as Osama bin Laden Station or UBL Station. It was also known as Alex Station. Alex Station actually is a code name for the UBL Station. In fact, the former chief of UBL Station was Michael Scheuer. He had a son, Alec, and therefore the code name Alex Station. CS3 stated that sometime in 2000, he or she was assigned to UBL Station. He or she and another FBI agent became aware that two suspected terrorists, Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar, had multiple entry visas to enter the United States. CS3 stated that the two hijackers ultimately made their way to the United States and that prior to entering the United States, the CIA had tracked the above individuals to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. CS3 stated that the two hijackers attended what CS3 described as a high-level meeting with members of Al-Qaeda. According to CS3, after the meeting, Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar then traveled to the United States via Bangkok, Thailand. Okay, a little bit more. I think CS3 is Mark Rossini. It's either him or Doug Miller. And I think it's Mark Rossini. Because the rest of the information I'm reading will confirm that. And yes, the CIA became aware of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi from the NSA. The NSA was listening to phone calls of the house in Yemen, which is the Al-Qaeda communications hub, house owned by Ahmed al-Hada. And the NSA heard about a phone call in December of 1999 from a person named Khalad, who's Tawfiq bin Attash, who is linked to the Cole bombing. Okay. Now, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, Khalid al-Mihdhar was on the phone, and Tawfiq bin Attash told him about this high-level summit meeting that Nawaf al-Hazmi is to attend, and his brother Salim al-Hazmi are to attend, along with Khalid al-Mihdhar. NSA told the CIA and the FBI about this meeting because the NSA doesn't do human intelligence on the ground work. They only do signals intelligence in the hopes that the CIA and the FBI would share information with them, but they didn't. And the NSA didn't share all the information with the CIA or the FBI. CS3 stated that his or her FBI colleague at UBL station, whose identity is known to me, prepared a central intelligence report outlining the possible presence of al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar in the United States. Okay, now we know CS3 is Mark Rossini because the person who made the central intelligence report, the draft, the infamous draft of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi along with their U.S. visas, was Doug Miller. All right, let's continue. CS3 stated that after the CIR was prepared, he or she attempted to send it to the FBI, where it would eventually be forwarded to agents for action. CS3 recalled that a CIA analyst whose identity is known to me and is herein referred to under the cryptonym VVV told him or her that per the deputy head of UBL station, he or she was not to distribute the CIR to anyone outside of UBL station. Well, VVV would be Michelle Ann Casey, because the deputy head, the deputy director of the Bin Laden Issue Station is Tom Wilshire. According to Mark Rossini, he was accosted by Michelle Ann Casey and told that the FBI, it's not an FBI matter, that they think the next attack is in Southeast Asia and will let the FBI know. You're not allowed to share that information. So Mark Rossini was threatened with prosecution if he shared that information. CS3 related that he or she passed this information to his FBI counterpart at UBL station, and as a result, the CIO was not sent. Later in the course of an inquiry into the events prior to 9/11, VVV claimed that he or she had passed the information regarding the two suspected terrorists to the FBI. This was, by the way, this is a lie. Later on, another CIA analyst and one of the first hire at UBL station, Alfreda M. Bukowski, would later give closed-door testimony to the 9/11 Commission and state that she walked over the information herself. Well, this was a lie because at the Washington D.C. headquarters, there's actually a card reading where you have to enter the building, and there was no entry of Alfreda M. Bukowski at all. And then she says, I remember sending it anyway. She lied. Let's continue. However, according to CS3, the document was located by CIA officials in their computer system sometime after 9/11 during an Inspector General's investigation into the events leading up to 9/11 attacks. According to the CS3, the CIA IG also obtained copies of instant messages from the deputy head of the UBL station to unnamed persons that corroborate CS3's account of the events leading up to 9/11, because the deputy head of UBL station, Tom Wilshire, was basically also working with the FBI on the Cole investigation. Now, that's pretty convenient. Why would he do that? Well, basically because he can basically spy on the FBI regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi and anybody else who was at the Malaysia Summit meeting to see if the FBI knew who they were, or knew they were in the country. And the FBI didn't. They had not. CS3 stated that she was interviewed about the events prior to 9/11 hijackings sometime in 2002 by representatives of the Joint Congressional Inquiry into 9/11 attacks. CS3 stated that before he and her FBI colleague was interviewed, she was told by CIA officials, notice where it says before he, didn't say she, that you know it's a man, officials at UBL station not to cooperate fully with congressional investigations. Now, why would the CIA do this, right? Why would you not want the FBI to basically act on good faith and tell the truth before the Joint House inquiry. Now, when Mark Rossini was interviewed by the Inspector General, the CIA's Inspector General, in the room at the same time, which nobody should have been in the room with Mark Rossini, were CIA officials, making sure that Rossini didn't tell them anything, really much of anything important, especially that infamous Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi cable. So they were threatening Mark Rossini. Let's continue. According to CS3, the CIA had an officer in the room while he or she was being interviewed by the congressional investigators. CS3 stated that he or she never mentioned the order not to distribute the CIR to congressional investigators. CS3 stated that when he or she was questioned by the CIA's own Inspector General about the events prior to 9/11, he or she did not mention the CIR as he or she had no lawyer present and was concerned with the legal ramifications of the CIR not being passed to the FBI because the CIR was CIA information. And yes, there are legal ramifications for passing on information to another agency. Those walls really don't exist anymore to an extent. But when it comes to information, yeah, it's true. But why would the CIA not want the FBI to basically monitor Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, two known al-Qaeda operatives who were at an al-Qaeda summit meeting with the planner of the Cole bombing, which would basically come under the investigation of the FBI, who was investigating the Cole bombing? CS3 recalled that shortly after the 9/11 attacks, he or she approached one of his or her supervisors, an FBI special agent whose identity is known to me, and told him or her about the existence of the CIR. CS3 stated that his or her supervisor asked him or her if he or she was sure that the CIR had been drafted. CS3 stated that he or she left his or her supervisor's office and returned with a draft of the CIR that he or she had obtained from another FBI agent at UBL station. According to CS3, the supervisor read the draft CIR and immediately called a counterterrorism official at FBI headquarters with news of the CIR's existence. According to CS3, his or her supervisor then quickly drove to headquarters with the draft CIR to meet the official in the parking lot of the Hoover building to give him a copy of the CIR. CS3 stated that he or she was unsure what happened to the draft CIR after it was given to the headquarters official. That headquarters official was Pasquale D'Amoro, Pasquale D'Amoro, who did nothing with it. Actually, in the video I made yesterday, which talked more about this, that person who gave the CIR to Pasquale D'Amoro was given a promotion that he didn't even ask for. And he was promoted out of the UBL station. Now, that person thinks that the reason why he got the promotion out of the UBL station was because he was in possession of the CIR that basically showed that the two men had visas and that Pasquale D'Amoro basically didn't want, for some reason, the CIA to be blamed here. Makes you wonder. Sometime after he or she was interviewed by the CIA's Inspector General, CS3 was questioned by investigators from the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility. CS3 stated that he or she told OPR investigators about the existence of the CIR and how CIA officials had ordered him not to distribute the document to the FBI. CS3 stated that he or she believed at the time that the CIA prevented the distribution of the CIR as the agency did not want the FBI interfering with the CIA operation that was being run domestically in violation of U.S. law. Bam! Because by law, the CIA is not allowed to conduct operations inside the United States. And maybe this is the reason why they were working on behalf with the Saudis to monitor or to try and flip Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, because the CIA, under the director of counterterrorism, Cofer Black, wanted informants inside al-Qaeda because he said that he was aghast that the CIA didn't have informants inside al-Qaeda. Or something else was afoot. Now, CS3 explained that 2 suspected Al-Qaeda terrorists were living in San Diego, California during 2000. CS3 stated that Omar al-Bayoumi was working for the Saudi intelligence service when he approached Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar in San Diego. According to CS3, al-Bayoumi set up bank accounts and rented an apartment for the 2 hijackers in the San Diego area. CS3 stated that this was done at the behest of the CIA. How about that? At the behest of the CIA. This is huge. Through the Saudi intelligence service. So, according to CS3, Mark Rossini, the CIA and the Saudi intelligence service were working hand in hand. According to CS3, prior to the 9/11 attacks, the CIA was under pressure to recruit informants within Al-Qaeda. Responding to this pressure, VVV and his or her colleagues at the CIA were attempting the recruit of al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar via a liaison relationship with the Saudi GID. Huge. I mean, this is, God's sakes, I can't believe no one's talking about this. This is amazing. Damning stuff. I wonder if it's prosecutable. Anyway, CS3 further explained that the operation was being run by CIA analysts rather than case officers. CS3 stated that normally officers trained in covert operations ran human sources at the CIA. However, in the case of the 2 hijackers living in San Diego, CS3 told me that a team of analysts ran the operation inside the United States. CS3 stated that had the FBI had been informed about the possible presence of the 2 Al-Qaeda operatives in the United States, the investigation would have ultimately been turned over to the New York field office sometime in 2000 for further action and possible disruption of the 9/11 plot. Bingo, right? But now this is armchair quarterback, and we don't know whether or not that the intelligence services knew the 9/11 attacks were going to happen. That's speculation. But we do know that the CIA knew these 2 men were inside the United States and knew that they were Al-Qaeda operatives and knew that they arrived from a high-level Al-Qaeda summit meeting and knew, the NSA knew at least, that these 2 men were involved at some level with the Cole bombing and the bombing of the 1998 East Africa embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. Man, we got names to go along with this. This is unbelievable. Anyway, according to CS3, the FBI had an interest in Al-Qaeda for a number of years prior to 9/11 attacks. In 1998, for example, an FBI special agent whose identity is known to me learned from an Al-Qaeda suspect that a hardline phone located in a house in Yemen was being used as a communication switchboard by the organization. That FBI agent is John Antisev. John Antisev was in Tanzania and actually interviewed Muhammad al-Olhali, who is actually one of the surviving members of the truck bombs used for the U.S. Embassy bombings in Tanzania. Or is it Dar es Salaam, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Kenya? We got one of those mixed up. Anyway, unbeknownst to John Antisev, right, or Jack Clunan from the FBI, the CIA already knew about this phone number. And the NSA even knew it before them. The NSA was the first agency to know about this number in Yemen and didn't share with anybody. Nobody. But a CIA analyst working with the NSA told Michael Scheuer about this, and Scheuer went to the deputy director of the NSA, Barbara McNamara, and basically said that, we have a bug inside the house, but what we don't have is a tap on the phone. Could you give us the other half of the cables? And the NSA said no. And Scheuer is that type that doesn't believe in the word no. And the NSA won out because they basically threatened CIA with legal action if they were to compromise the operation. Thought everybody was on the same page here. Right? However, according to CS3, agency of the United States Intelligence Committee were able to determine that al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar were trafficked to Malaysia for the meeting. CS3 stated that sometime during June of 2001, the CIA approached the FBI's counterterrorism squad in the New York field office and asked for a meeting regarding the al-Hazmi and al-Midar. CS3 told me that the CIA had lost track of the two terrorists and were asking for the FBI's help in locating the two subjects. A little bit more about this. Now, after the Malaysia summit meeting, Khalid al-Midar and Nawaf al-Hazmi left for Bangkok, Thailand. Now, according to the CIA, they lost track of them. But the NSA didn't. And when they arrived inside the United States, it was known to the NSA. And it was known to the CIA because the CIA knew about that cable because the cable had the US visas and knew they were coming inside the United States. Now, according to Richard Blee, the new chief of Alex Station, who was hired in 1999 to replace Michael Scheuer, more of a team player for the CIA, basically went before a principals meeting of the leading officials of the intelligence services and the Defense Department and the Department of State, and basically said that we lost track of them. But they really didn't, because they knew they were inside the United States. Because according to CS3, Mark Rossini, that the Saudis and the CIA were working hand to hand regarding the operation of Khalid al-Midar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. So Richard Blee lied. Let's continue. CS3 recalled that he or she was excluded from this meeting in New York by CIA's deputy UBL station chief, herein referred to under the cryptonym HHH, that's Tom Wilshire. CS3 told me that he or she present at the meeting, he or she would have told the FBI agents assigned to the counterterrorism squad that the two suspected terrorists were of record in indices with the CIA since 2000. And CS3 would have further explained al-Hazmi al-Midar's role in the terrorist summit in Malaysia in January 2000. The CIA knew this in January 2000 and withheld it from the FBI and the State Department for 16 months. Man. Let's continue. CS3 stated that sometime after the events of 9/11, he or she was in a staff meeting with several level FBI and CIA officials regarding terrorism. CS3 stated that he or she overheard one senior CIA official, Director of Operations James Pavitt, telling CIA Director George Tenet that he was glad we kept CIA analyst Michelle Ann Casey from the 9/11 Commission investigators. Now, why is that? What? That is tremendous. Holy shit. Now, let me explain this, because according to Gary Bernstein, who is the leader of the Operation Jawbreaker program in the capture or kill of Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, in his book Jawbreaker, which was fantastic, I even did a podcast episode on this. He happened to thought that when he was being replaced, and he was close to catching bin Laden, he had him surrounded in Pakistan in a place called the White Mountains. And then all of a sudden, he's being replaced by none other than Richard Blee. And Richard Blee brought with him Michelle Ann Casey. And I wonder why that is. Well, here it is. James Pavitt, the director of operations, telling George Tenet that they were glad that the CIA kept VVV, which is Michelle Ann Casey, from 9/11 Commission investigators, because it was Michelle Ann Casey who told Mark Rossini not to send that information regarding the cable to the FBI, because that would mean that the CIA was running an illegal operation inside the United States with the Saudi government regarding Khalid al-Midar and Nawaf al-Hazmi in trying to flip them. An illegal operation that would probably get Michelle Ann Casey fired or even charged with a crime, maybe. This is remarkable. Here it is, right here in black and white to the public. How is this not news? I didn't even know this until I read it just now. This is, it's just, oh, it's so big. It's so big. This document so far is unbelievable. And we're on the last page for part one. CS3 recalled that Tenet acknowledged Pavitt's statement and confirmed that keeping VVV from the 9/11 Commission was a good idea. Booyah! Now we got the director of the CIA basically confirming it. I mean, holy mackerel, folks. The director of the operations and the director of the CIA, the DCI, basically saying that it was a good idea to keep Michelle and Casey away from the 9/11 Commission investigators. Why? Because they knew they were running an illegal operation inside the United States, right here. CS3 stated that the conversation indicated that two CIA officials had conspired to obstruct the 9/11 Commission by keeping VVV, Michelle and Casey, hidden from 9/11 Commission officials. CS3 stated that CIA officials claimed to 9/11 Commission officials that VVV was serving in Italy, but in reality, he or she was in Afghanistan, just like Gary Burnson said in Operation Jawbreaker. He was right. I believed him then. I believe it now. Thank you, Mark Rossini. Thank you. You are a true whistleblower. You're a true truth teller. I always believed that in you. If you ever see this video, thank you. And now I know why you were under pressure from the CIA. And you had a right to be, because they would have prosecuted you. And it was not your fault. I know you bear weight with that. Don't be. Don't be. Yeah, 9/11 happened. You didn't know that. You didn't know what was going to happen. I know there's a lot of weight on your shoulders. But you're a hero. For me, anyway. You tried. That's all you could ask for. You tried. CS3 stated that he or she believes that Al-Hadmi al-Midar obtained the visas to enter the United States at the American consulate in Jeddah. No, wasn't it Riyadh? I think it was Riyadh. Anyway, according to CS3, the visas were issued to facilitate the operation run by the Saudis GID and the CIA team at UBL station. Wow. Wow. Man. This is some damning stuff. I mean, that's I don't know what to say. That's incredible. That they even knew that they helped them get their visas. I mean, the consulate officer, I did a podcast episode on this too. The consulate officer in Jeddah was Shayna Steiger. In fact, we had a great conversation. I had a great conversation with Ben and Eric at the podcast for New American Century regarding this too. And they, in fact, no, they did their own separate podcast on that. And please go watch that. Listen to that. They're great. They're just great. I love those guys. Anyway, CS3 stated that Omar al-Bimi was under investigation by the FBI prior to 9/11. That's true. In August of 2016, I interviewed a former FBI special agent whose identity is known to me. The agent is herein referred to as CS5. CS5 told me that prior to 9/11, he or she was assigned to terrorism matters. CS5 told me that the New York field office was responsible for investigations linked to Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda. CS5 recalled that he or she was familiar with the names Omar al-Bimi and Fahad al-Tamari. CS5 stated that the two individuals mentioned above were the subject of an FBI investigation centered in San Diego, California. Now, we're up to page 7. I may stop right there. I'm going to stop right there. Okay? Because I'm not going to read all 22 pages. I'm sorry. You got things to do. This is part 1. And my God, this is huge info, because now we have an FBI official on the record whose name is redacted, whose name is protected because he was speaking on conditions of anonymity to a member of the Office of Military Commissions, that the CIA was working in conjunction with the Saudi government or Saudi intelligence officials at the GID, the General Intelligence Directorate, the Mukbaraf. I always get the lingo wrong. And that George Tenet and James Pavitt, the director of operations and the director of CIA, acknowledged that sending Michelle Ann Casey, who is the lead ticket at the Yemen hub, she was in charge of that operation, not to be investigated by the 9/11 Commission on purpose. On purpose. Huge. I didn't know that. I suspected it. but now we know for sure. All right, listen, we'll be back. I think Wednesday I'll do part 2. Maybe if I can't contain my excitement, I'll do it tomorrow. And it'll be tomorrow, Wednesday. So, hey guys, again, have a good night. Unbelievable information. Just remarkable. How is this not all over the news is beyond me. Have a good night. I'll see you in the next video.